Hi guys, it's Lindsay. In today's video, I'm going to be using watercolor paints to create a floral scene for my sister's wedding invitation. She asked me for sunflowers. She's having a fall wedding, and also said one of the colors she's interested in is maroon or burgundy. So here I am starting with the sunflower. I've added a base color wash of cadmium yellow with my Winsor & Newton watercolors. And I'm going in now to add ridges and details to the petals with that same cadmium yellow hue with a little bit of alizarin crimson mixed in to give it a slightly darker, more orange tone. I've added a little more of the alizarin crimson to the mix to intensify the base of the petal there. And since the original streaks were still wet, it kind of bleeds in and mixes those colors and fades them into each other real nice. Here I have a small pool of alizarin crimson on my palette, and I'm going to go in and get some Prussian blue to mix into it to make more of that maroon burgundy shade I need for the other flowers. Here I am, I'm going to give the maroon flowers a bit of a flat wash to get their color in before we start adding in details. Now, I went online and I looked at several photos of sunflowers to get an idea of what I needed to have as far as their petal layouts and shapes and details, and also found some beautiful flowers, and I don't remember what they're called. Hold on a second. Ah, yes, silly me. These are hollyhocks. I looked at lots of examples of hollyhocks to get an idea of how their petals kind of bent around each other and laid out, and where their shadows were and their shapes. You'll see here I'm tapping the brush onto the still wet paint, and I'm doing that to drop more concentrated amounts of paint from the brush onto the wet paper to add some different variations into the colors of the petals, because it helps keep it look more natural and less graphic design style, where you might have just three colors layered and very sharp with sharp edges where they don't mix. So to make this feel more natural, I do a wet on wet and drop some more concentrated paint on top of the wet paper. All right, I'm gonna let this dry and go see who's knocking at our back porch. I've pushed our burgundy mixture from earlier by adding more Prussian blue to it to paint in the shadows in between where the petals cluster tightly together in the double hollyhocks that I've been seeing pictures of online. Now I'm coming in with a mix that's more heavy on the alizarin crimson to kind of bring back some of that reddish color where the sunlight comes in and is hitting it. Make sure we're not pushing it too violet past where we want to be in that burgundy maroon kind of color range.
$3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6 cents. $3.06. All right. $1. No.
Now I'm using a very watered down version of the Prussian blue and alizarin crimson paint that I had mixed for the dark shadows on the hollyhocks. I'm using the lightened version to create lines between the sunflower's petals and shadows and details.
And also die. That's all that I need.
This isn't the first design that I created for my sister's wedding invitation. I had originally drawn up on my iPad in the Procreate app a design that had a mason jar holding sunflowers and a couple other kinds of flowers and a rustic wood kind of background based on some of the other ideas she had given me. And I had gotten to the point where I was starting to lay out the words on it, and I was going to send her a copy and see what she thought when my iPad just gave up the ghost. It had been repeatedly freezing up for the past few weeks before this, and it would freeze up with green streaks through the screen, but if I gave it a hard restart, everything would come back and everything looked fine. This time, it wasn't coming on. It wasn't the screen, it wasn't the battery. Unfortunately, repair shop told me that it was the CPU and they couldn't do anything about it. So I'm out of the digital art game for a while. It was a first gen Apple iPad Pro, so it had given me 6 years of a good run so far, but I'm really missing it.
Sorry to interrupt you on your video.
That's okay. I'll probably speed it up and record voiceover. Know what I mean, Jellybean?
Okay.
I'm trying to paint some flowers for Aunt Jolene's wedding invitation. She asked me to design it for them.
Okay. First, the little weird, just seeing the yellow part. I was like,
Is it better now that it's got more flowers? My latest YouTube obsession has been the channel Natalie Lawyer Chick. I love seeing her reactions to courtroom videos or law interactions. She tells you from a standpoint of a defense attorney. She tells you the different laws and statutes and things and how to interact properly with law enforcement, and gives you a take on whether the civilian or the law enforcement, whoever it is, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. And it's really interesting. I love her take on things. You should check her out. I'm using alizarin crimson again to go in and add more details and contours to the petals on the double hollyhocks. Here I'm coming in with cadmium yellow hue to dot along the seeds of the sunflower, the center of the sunflower. I really like how when you look at the center of a sunflower, the seeds go in a spiraling pattern across the surface of the head of the sunflower. And I really wanted to get some of that detail and texture into this painting. All right, back to the palette. Here I'm mixing some sap green and cadmium yellow to create a very light pale green color, which I'm using to line out and make the stems of a baby's breath kind of filler flower. It's always good to have a variety of different sizes and shapes in your bouquets or even in your paintings. So I wanted to make sure to add something very light and fragile and small. Here I'm going in with a darker green, which is a sap green with a little blue in it, to come in and do the veining on the sunflower's leaf. For the leaves near the hollyhocks, I'm using a darker shade of the green. It's still the sap green and the Prussian blue that I've already used in this painting, but I'm mixing them just to make these leaves a little bit darker so they stand out from the baby's breath and the sunflower's leaf. I'm only painting half of the leaf and outlining it. Then I'm coming back in with clean water on my brush to kind of bring that paint out, but in a much lighter and softer texture. It adds some dimension to the leaves. I'm coming in with a very pale watered down version of that Prussian blue and alizarin crimson mix that I've used a few times in this painting. And I'm using that to dot gently on the ends of those stems and kind of bunch in and make some tiny, tiny flowers. You'll see that the mix does skew blue, which is what I want. And I'm just doing tiny, tiny dots and clusters here. Add some more interest and details. And here it is. It's dry. The painting is finished. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I've got to scan it in and then we can tuck it into the top left-hand corner of the invitation and lay out the words. I sent a copy of it to Jolene and she seems to be pretty happy with it. So I'm excited to be able to do this for her and that she liked how it turned out. Thanks guys for watching. Bye.